Welcome back to my channel. I am back with another video. Today we're going to be talking about some of my favorite thriller recs that I personally own a physical copy of. I'm only going to do these ones for today, but I might dive into some of my Kindle and audiobook reads another day. I love thrillers. They're one of my favorite genre books to read, especially when I'm in a reading slump, which unfortunately happens way more often than I want to admit. But thriller is such an easy way to get out of a reading slump because they're so bingeable. You want to know what happens, you want to know the plot twist, and I could never see a plot twist coming. That's one thing about me. So let's just dive into it. I will give a little bit of a disclaimer that I am still pretty new to recording YouTube videos and they make me extremely nervous. In the past, I've tried scripting them, but they felt really unnatural. So I'm just going to talk and sort of say whatever comes to my head. And hopefully this isn't too scatterbrained. Editing's probably going to be a lot, but that's okay. That's okay. We're going to talk. We're going to discuss some of my favorite thrillers and hopefully you'll get some recs out of this. I'm going to start off with a thriller that I read very recently. This has elements of time travel and it is so much fun. It is called Wrong Place, Wrong Time by Gillian McAllister. This book features a woman named Sam who is watching her young son come home after a night out when she witnesses him committing a violent murder. She is obviously devastated. This is her son who has great grades. He's a good boy. Why would he do something so violent and so heinous? When she wakes up the next morning, she finds that she's gone back in time and she realizes that she is meant to prevent this horrible crime from happening, figure out why it happened, and try to save her son's future. This was so unexpected. I think I just didn't understand the premise of the book when I went into it. I go into most of the books I read pretty blindly, so I didn't know that there was time travel, so that was kind of a bit of a surprise to me, but it was a lot of fun. I loved reading Jen's POV, but there was a secondary POV, and they seem to take place in two separate timelines, and when they converge, wow, it is so worth the wait when those two timelines converge and you kind of realize what's happening. So exciting. This was so bingeable. As you can see, I tabbed it quite a bit. I had so much fun reading this. It was such a good time. And I think that if you're looking for something to binge that's a little bit different than your typical thriller, this might be something to pick up. Next up, I have The Club by Ellery Lloyd. This book I honestly read about 3 years ago, and I still think about it all the time. I will admit that there is a bunch of different POVs in this book. And at first that was like a little bit shocking to me, but I genuinely think that all those POVs give like a really well-rounded look into this universe. The Club is about this very hyper-exclusive VIP club where they have resorts all around the world, and they're currently opening a new resort on a private island. During the night when the tide comes in, there is no access to this private island. Everybody who is anybody is part of this exclusive club. There's celebrities, there's politicians, there's very wealthy people, and a lucky few normal people get to just work for the club. And so this book follows people who work for the club, people who are guests of the club, and people who are involved with the curation and creation of the club. On the grand opening night, there starts being a pileup of bodies, and obviously nobody can get on or off the island, so someone on the island is involved with these murders, and you're trying to figure it out along with all the different people that are on the island. This was really unexpected, really different because of those multiple POVs, and I think like honestly worth the read. I don't see enough people talking about this. I think this is a really sort of like classic, straightforward thriller, but presented in a different format than you might be used to. Next up, we have The Maid by Nita Prose. I'm putting this in here for a couple different reasons. Number one being, I loved it. Number two being that I think that there's been a disservice done in like the promotion or like the recommendation of this, because every time I saw this recommended, people were saying it's like The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. And I'm here to say this is nothing like The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. This book stands on its own. It is not a remake of The Housemaid. It really has very little similarity to The Housemaid, other than that there is a maid involved and perhaps some marital issues with one of the potential murder victims. Other than that, very, very different than The Housemaid. This features Molly, who is a maid at a hotel, and she sees the world differently than the average person. She is a extremely unique protagonist, and I have not seen a protagonist written like Molly ever. She is very unique. definitely has some signs of being neurodivergent in the way that she sees the world. She is a very prompt, very to the point, very straightforward. She likes things to be done in a certain way and fashion, has a routine with her job every day. But when one of the guests at the hotel ends up murdered, she kind of ends up in the middle of the investigation as a person of interest. She may or may not have some information about what happened to the murder victim. And the plot twist I did not see coming. Like, not at all, not even a little bit. I thought it was really exciting. I thought it was really interesting. And most importantly, I thought it was very different than The Housemaid. And I'm saying that as someone who loves The Housemaid, but seeing this recommended as something similar to The Housemaid is the reason why I put it on this list, because it's not like The Housemaid, but I think it stands on its own. Next, we're going to dive into sort of a psychological / horror type thriller, and I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This is a very popular book. There is even a Netflix show or movie made about it. I haven't seen it, but there's a reason that this is so highly recommended. This is one of the most eerie books that I've read in such a long time. You literally could feel that like sense of dread creeping up your spine as you read it from the very first line, which is, I'm thinking of ending things. And now that the main character of this book has thought about ending things, it's all they can think about. They can't get rid of the thought. It's planted itself in their head and it just won't go away. They're currently on a road trip to meet their boyfriend's family for the first time. And when they arrive at the boyfriend's family farm, things are immediately eerie and just off. There's something not quite right. You're very, very quickly able to tell that things aren't quite right with the boyfriend and his family, but it's hard to sort of put your finger on exactly what it is. As the book progresses, it gets crazier and more wild, and it ends in a place where I'm still kind of reeling from it. I clearly tabbed the crap out of this book. I enjoyed it so thoroughly. I thought it was such a weird and fun and bingeable read. It's a really short book. You can get through it in a couple of hours, and I think it's definitely worth the read. Now it is time for The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. I was very heavily debating which book by Freida McFadden I would put into this list. I have read, I think, 22 Freida McFadden books, so I would say that I'm a little bit of an expert when it comes to Freida McFadden. This is the first book I read of hers, and honestly, I do think this is one of her best. There's a reason why this book is so popular. It's extremely bingeable. It's extremely easy to read. It has a plot that has so many twists and turns. You don't really know what to expect next. I didn't find it predictable. I found it really kind of wild and interesting, and I really enjoyed watching Millie, who is the housemaid, and her story progression. There are 2 other books in this series. Honestly, I think that you could read the first one and forget about the other 2, but this is definitely worth the read. It is a very straightforward thriller, very easy to read, very bingeable. This one's going to be a little bit more controversial because Colleen Hoover is one of those very polarizing figures in the bookish community. And while other books that I've read by Colleen have not been my cup of tea, I thought Verity is a great place to enter the thriller sort of space. If you're new to thrillers, if you're just sort of dipping your foot in and you're more used to like romance, say, Verity is a really good place to start. It is weird. It is a little bit eerie, but it's not so heavy that it's going to scare you away from the genre. And it also is extremely bingeable. This is such an easy book to read. You can just get through it in a couple of hours. This features Loan, who is looking for a job, and she gets a job as a caretaker to a woman who is bedridden and had an accident, a very mysterious accident. And when she finds this woman's journals, things take a very complicated and eerie twist. Again, just so easy to read. And I think that for an entry-level thriller, this is sort of a go-to book and probably one of Colleen Hoover's best books, in my opinion. Not that I've read everything by her, but this almost doesn't feel like it was written by Colleen Hoover. I'll put it that way. My next 3 recommendations are actually all going to be young adults. However, I feel that these are good for any age group. I didn't feel like I was reading a child's book for most of them, so let's jump into them. The Naturals, if you're a fan of Criminal Minds, this is probably going to be something that you'll enjoy. This book focuses on Cassie, who is a 17-year-old who has a natural ability to sort of analyze behavior in other people, and she gets invited to be part of a very experimental FBI program where they are taking teenagers who have natural abilities such as profiling and others to be trained to become FBI profilers in the future and be part of a behavioral analyst unit. And Cassie's natural ability and also her background with her mother disappearing and potentially being a suspected victim to a serial killer makes her uniquely suited for this program. She joins the program. She gets pulled into this current active serial killer's web, and she's trying to figure out what happened to her mother, and it's very crazy. There's a lot of plot twists, but also it is lighthearted in the sense that in the midst of all this craziness, you have a brewing love triangle, you have sort of teenage tensions rising, and a house full of teenagers who are exceptional in their own fields. And I thought this was such a fun and quick read. Again, if you're a fan of Criminal Minds, this will probably be something you enjoy. This one, out of all the books on this list, is the one that feels the most like it's made for teenagers, because it is, but still super enjoyable even if you're an adult. Next up, we have actually my most recent read. I just finished this book a couple days ago. It's called The Blonde Dies First by Joelle Wellington. This was so much fun. This was such a good book, and I genuinely didn't know what to expect going into it. This does have a bit of a supernatural element. These last two books both do. However, it very much presents itself as a straightforward slasher book and follows sort of the formula as set out by like 90s slashers such as Scream, where they are very tropey and archetypal in the way that the killer, the slasher, goes about their manifesto and the way that they are killing people. This book features Devin and her group of friends, and Devin's twin sister is a high-achieving teenager. She's decided to graduate high school a year early, and Devin is terrified of losing her sister forever as she goes off to college to do bigger and better things. She's determined to make this summer the best summer ever, and she has a whole list of things she wants to do, starting with going to a party. And her plan for the best summer ever goes totally awry when someone brings out a Ouija board at the party and unleashes something onto the group that is just horrifying. And the thing that is unleashed upon them is some sort of demonic entity that is hunting them down systematically like a killer in a slasher movie. Devin and her friend group have to figure out how to survive the movie. It was so much fun. I loved the sort of found family type aspect with the friend group. The side characters in this were really great. And overall, it was just really fun. I found it impossible to put down. I read this in about 3.5 hours, and it genuinely did not feel like a young adult book. It very much just felt like a slasher. It felt like reading a book based on Scream or something of that type. It was really, really good, and I highly, highly, highly recommend it. I haven't been able to stop talking about it since I read it. And lastly, I have to recommend one of my favorite books of all time, Tender Beasts by Lascelles Sambury. I am obsessed with this book. I love this book. I talk about it constantly. I tell everyone to read this book. I just think it is such a unique and beautiful story told in the form of a supernatural thriller. This story features around the Bears, which are a very wealthy family that have started a private school, and Sunny is sort of the main character, the protagonist of this book, when her younger brother is accused of committing a horrible murder about a year after her own mother passed. She is committed to proving his innocence, and as she uncovers the secrets of her mother's teenagehood, she starts to unravel this horrible generational curse put on the Bear family because of her mother and father's actions. And it's just a crazy, wild ride. The thing I love about Lascelles Sambury is the way that she tackles familial trauma and generational curses as supernatural monsters and entwines those two elements in a way that feels so relatable. I just think this is so beautifully written. It's so creepy and eerie and weird, and the dual timeline really makes it suspenseful. Like, you need to know what happens and how the two stories sort of cross paths in the current day. So good, so well done. I will never stop recommending this. This is one of my favorite thrillers of of all time. And if you're into supernatural type thrillers, this has to be on your list. It's so good. Again, it is a young adult book, but it doesn't feel young. It is so good, and I highly, highly recommend it. And that is it for my list of thrillers on my physical bookshelf. Maybe I'll do a part 2 where I talk about sort of like audiobooks or Kindle reads of thrillers, because I read a lot of thrillers. But this is my list for today. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got some good recs out of these. I tried to do ones that I don't see all the time over and over again, but were also ones that I truly did enjoy and would recommend to like a friend if they ask. And that's going to be it for today's video.